So I've got all this rough cut lumber from the mill, and just wanted to show you guys how I'm squaring it up. Of course, it's real important when you're doing any sort of woodworking that your material stock is square, which of course is a big benefit to buying at retail where it's already all dimensioned up. But like I said, I bought 500 board foot and saved $500, so I can spend a little extra time you know, working this lumber to save that money. So anyway, you know, it's all rough cut and it's cut on a band mill, and so that bandsaw blade can kind of wander on you. It doesn't do it a whole lot, but it can wander a little bit to the point that you won't necessarily get real straight edges. And I'm looking for an example here, but I mean, if you look along this piece, well, I don't know if it even, to be honest with you, it looks pretty square through here. But I want to make sure that it's square. What I found in the last load that I got, I didn't manually square the first edge. So I just threw it on the table saw. I took an edge off. I used the rip fence as a square edge. I took an edge off, and then I flipped it over and did the other edge. But I found that I still had a little bit of wave in it. I don't know, maybe if we look at this piece here. Look down the length of this piece here, you can see kind of how it bows out right about there, and then kind of curves back in, hooks back out at the end. See, that's what we're looking at. We're looking at that wave over the length. So you want to get that out. So you have to square one edge first, independent of a square saw surface. You can't use the rip fence on your table saw for your first square. So what I did is I've made myself a jig. First thing I did was I used that piece of 3/4 inch angle iron. It's pretty straight. I'm gonna trust that it's straight. And I clamped it to this board. That was a little bit tough because of how the circular saw, the shape of the circular saw, I had a hard time getting a good flat surface to work on. So what I did was I laid this board beside this board. They're about the same thickness, pretty close. Beside it, and I left a gap about that wide, just enough for the saw blade to pass safely. And that way that most of my weight of my saw actually rested on this board while I trimmed this one. So I just ran the angle iron down the length of this, or this channel, square tube down the length of this piece, and I clamped out of there with these clamps here. Once I got this edge of this board squared up, now I can use this board as my straight edge to square up this board and every board here on out. The reason that's good is because, like I said, with the angle laid up there, I'll show you here. See, with the angle laid up there, you got to get it in close. And let me grab my saw. When you go to run your saw across it, on here, which my blade's set real high, but you see when I set my blade down low like it needs to be, the body of the saw here wants to ride on that piece of channel or piece of tube steel. And so it made it where my blade was defaulting at a bevel. So I had to be real careful to cut that first one. But now with the channel off, or I guess the problem actually wasn't the, I keep saying channels, the tube steel. The problem wasn't the tube, it was the clamp. So when you get the tube here plus the clamp, starting off, I was off. But blah, blah, blah. Anyway, point is, I got it square now, and now I can use, instead of the tube steel, I can use this board as my square. And the good thing about that is that I can clamp back here away from where my saw will ride. Now the saw, of course, is actually riding down here. The body of the saw hangs out here, so it avoids that clamp. So I was able to make one quick, clean pass without bumping into those clamps. So it made a good, clean cut. So now, with this edge here squared up, now the ends aren't cut square. The ends are not square at all. I mean, these are chainsaw cuts from when they actually cut the tree down, so they're real rough. But with this side square, now I can flip it over, which my table saw got junk all over, but I can flip it over and I can use the rip fence that's on my table saw as a square edge. So I'll set the rip fence, you know, the width a hair less than the width of the board away from the blade, and then I'll pass this on the table saw to square up the opposite edge. Then when I know I have both edges good and square, Then I can throw it on the miter saw and use the rip fence on the miter saw as a square edge. And then of course I got my miter set at 90 so I can get a good square end cut on it. So like I said, it takes, you know, a second or two longer, but I mean it's one extra cut. So it takes me a little bit longer, but what I like to do is I'll let this lumber dry out for a couple weeks, at least as much as I can. I've got to use some of it now. I've got to build boxes. But I'll let this lumber dry out pretty good, and then I'll just come out here one day and I'll run, you know, 20, 30, heck, if I have the time, I'll run the whole doggone stack. Run all of it and go ahead and square all of it on both sides, or at least at a minimum square the one side, because I don't ever know. You don't necessarily have to square the other side because you might end up scrapping the other side out and not ever having to cut it. So I'll come out here one day and just, you know, try to run as many of them as I can, square them up on this jig real quick, square that one edge, and then I know that I've always got a good square edge to start from, and I'll always measure off that square edge and square everything off that square edge. So like I said, it's not rocket science. Most of you guys that watch my channel, I don't imagine saw out your own lumber like this. Maybe you do, but certainly if you're building a lot of boxes, if you got a local mill, that's the way to go. Find your local mill, save yourself a lot of money. You know, shop local, use local products. That's always good, right? Support your little local economy. Like I said, most of you probably don't really care, won't pay attention to this, but it has applications outside of just building bee boxes. So I'll post it here on the beekeeping video under my DIY section. You know, kind of the, well, I don't know, we'll call it lumber preparation or something for building boxes. But I'll probably actually publish this on my other channel as well, my homesteading channel. I think it'll have a lot more application there. I think I've got a lot of people that follow me there that build a lot more of their own stuff, building raised beds and chicken coops and everything else. So, you know, it never hurts. It's always good to know how to square up your lumber. So, again, get yourself a good jig. Really take your time, focus to get your jig, make sure it's square and beveled 90, and then you can use your jig on every piece thereafter. And at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, your jig's got a square edge on it too, so you can use it up too. So no waste, that's what we're after.